Hey, this is Owen. If you're comfortable, leave your first name and state at the sound of the tiny truck backing up.
Hey, Owen, this is Peter from Georgia. I recently, during COVID, found out that one of the door people, she's a woman who works in my apartment, is Jehovah's Witness. I find myself, she's a wonderful woman. I just find myself looking down on her and feeling that might be, I don't know, I find myself thinking of her as stupid. How do you view Jehovah's Witnesses now? Their intellect and act with one now that you are no longer a Jehovah's Witness. All right, have a nice day, man.
Appreciate the phone call. That's an interesting question. It is tempting to view religious people or Jehovah's Witnesses more specifically as dumb or fools who fell for the biggest ruse. In reality, they're really not. I was a Jehovah's Witness at one point in my life, and I'm not a fool. I don't consider myself a fool. Sometimes the smartest people find the most creative ways to justify ridiculous beliefs to themselves. I basically chalk it all up to mind control, essentially. I chalk it up to propaganda techniques that have been honed over centuries. That being said, they do look down on us, Jehovah's Witnesses do. I don't think it's wrong to wish that somebody could find their way out of a movement or religion or organization or whatever else. We should want to get them out if at all possible. We should want to help them break free of the bullshit that they've trapped themselves in. But I don't think they're inferior in any way. I just think they were duped, some of them from birth, like me. And they just need an event like I had that kind of snapped them out of it. Some people, that event will never come, and we just have to accept that. Some people, it's in the process of happening now. They're in the process of snapping out as we speak to them. We just have to afford everybody the courtesy of assuming that maybe they can kind of snap themselves out of it one day and realize that many of us were religious at one point too, and we weren't idiots then and we're not idiots now. Many of us aren't anyways. Some, statistically speaking, there are some idiots.
Hey, Owen. So I was just wondering, and I'll be honest, this isn't my idea, but I saw a video on YouTube a while ago about the idea that Christian music is like white magic that's brainwashes people into subservience. I was just wondering what your idea on that would be. Anyway, love your show. Keep doing your work.
I've heard a lot of conspiracy theories about music and frequencies altering the way you think and subliminal messaging and all of that other stuff. It's all nonsense, okay? In fact, I talked about a Big Nick video recently where Big Nick, this huge YouTuber, he's got like millions of followers, YouTuber and TikToker and, every other social media type out there. He's got like millions. And he's like giga religious. And he got on there and was talking about how if you play music at a certain frequency, like 440 hertz or something, I don't know what it is, then it'll take control of your mind or some other nonsense. And he says that's how Satanists do it. They play music at a certain number of hertz. It's just bullshit. From beginning to end, it's bullshit.
Stay away from secular music. A lot of this music is actually using frequencies to cause you harm. As we know, Satan was Lucifer in heaven, and he was in charge of music. We have to understand that our spiritual enemy knows way more about music than we do. The satanic Illuminati bloodline family, called the Rockefeller family, actually carried out a study on 440 hertz frequency. This programming frequency in music was shown to cause a lot of harm in people, such as greater aggression, psychological agitation, and emotional distress. A lot of big artists in the music industry are actually using this frequency to cause these problems in your life. Check out a very popular rapper named XXXTentacion talking about the same exact thing.
Music is frequency programming. Music is frequency. What frequency are you being fed? If I play with those frequencies, right, I can target certain parts of the mind.
But Christians have this like deep-seated fear that like Satan is using subliminal control to kind of pull people's strings and control them like puppets. It's nonsense. The subliminal messaging stuff doesn't work the way that a lot of people think it works. Like the neuro-linguistic programming stuff, NLP, a lot of for lack of a better term, scumbag armchair psychologists like to use NLP as like a method to control people or to get dates or whatever else. It doesn't work that way. That's not how it works. That's not how brainwashing works. That's not how mind control works. It's a complete misconception. And once you start looking into it, it becomes painfully obvious that that's the case. So anytime I hear somebody talking about like NLP or neuro-linguistic programming or music brainwashing people or whatever else, I hear Teal Swan talking about this all the time too. It's just nonsense. It's just cringy nonsense. Anyway, thanks for the voicemail.
Hey, what's up? This is Johnny from South New Jersey. Just curious what is defined as transphobia, and I'm asking because someone asked me recently if I would ever date somebody who was trans, and I said no, that's not my preference. And they went into a whole thing of that I'm transphobic, and that's why I wouldn't do it. And my argument would be, I'm into certain women. So if I don't date like a blonde hair, blue-eyed woman, would I be against blonde hair, blue-eyed women? But they kept on saying that I was transphobic, that I wouldn't date somebody who was trans, and I kind of feel that's not the case. It's just not my preference. So just curious what your idea of transphobic would be. Love your show. Keep it up.
I appreciate that. First off, I have to say society as a whole does not have enough respect for the trans community. It's blatantly obvious, and it's horrifying in a lot of ways. We need to have more respect for and recognize the trans community as the people that they are. That being said, your sexual preferences are your sexual preferences. You can't change or control that. It is what it is. We've already gone through this argument, like all through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, realizing that changing your sexual preferences or people attempting to force you to change them, that's wrong. However, a while back there was this super straight thing that came out where people were saying they're super straight, they don't believe in dating, trans people, blah, blah, blah. In the same vein, putting aside whether or not I am super straight, like that's a totally separate issue. I may or may not be. I'm not addressing that. But if I were super straight and I decided to go out there and parade that around, it would be similar to me going into a Discord server with Jewish people in it and saying, you guys died in the Holocaust, for example. Saying something that's extremely pointed for absolutely no reason. What would the goal be behind doing something like that? Is it just for the sake of being edgy? I mean, I don't get it. It's not a joke in any way. It's not funny. What are you trying to accomplish with this? Saying something like that is just hurting people around you and nothing more. So when it comes to the super straight thing, whether or not you prefer to be with trans or non-trans, you don't have to parade it around and shove it in people's faces and be an offensive shithead about it, basically, is my point. Your sexual preferences are your sexual preferences. Don't shove it down people's throats in the same way that, like, white nationalists do about, like, the Holocaust or whatever else. That's my take on it. Don't be a shithead. That's my whole thing. That's what I'm all about from beginning to end. Don't be an asshole.